Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. How does one make the leap from being a lifetime appointed federal administrative law judge and US Army officer to a master practitioner of energy medicine and expert in the techniques of illumination, soul retrieval, divination, death rites, and extractions of energies and entities? Well, for Karen Johnson, it started with the loss of her 27-year-old son to a heroin overdose. Instead of grieving in a way that made people around her comfortable, Karen did the unexpected. She quit her job, sold her house, all her belongings, and took off on a 2.5-year journey around the world, during which she found a healing practice that works. Karen shares her journey of transformation in her book, Living Grieving, using energy medicine to alchemize grief and loss. Karen joins us now to tell us a little bit about her journey and about the 10 best spiritual books that influenced her the most while she was on that journey. Karen Johnson, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It's good to have you. So, former US Army Reserve officer, Fulbright scholar, a retired federal administrative law judge who practiced criminal and energy law. Energy, note that word,
I
but
know.
a different kind of energy for more
Yeah.
than 30 years. I mean, with that background in mind, I'm curious to know whether your interest in spirituality and healing started after you made that transition, or were you a kind of did you have a closet interest much earlier in your life?
I had a closet experience as a child. So
Oh,
as a
you did.
child, I had a being that I saw with wings that looked to me like a fairy that lived in a tree, who was my invisible friend. And and then in the basement of our house, I had someone that looked to me like an Indian chief. And I was terrified of him. But the fairy like person and I played together, and my mother told me, don't tell anybody. You're going to end up, in a loony bin. In those days, they called them such words.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so keep that to yourself. And so at some point, I did. I just put all that aside and I traveled the left brain sort of pathway to achievement and success. And I say, grab any brass ring at any cost, sort of success. And I was very highly motivated. And I may have wanted to be a archaeologist and anthropologist when I was young. My parents talked me out of it. They said it's nothing to do for girls. It's too dangerous out there, and all those things. And of course, we didn't have the World Wide Web and internet and all those things we have in place today. So I succumbed to all that. And then for 30 years, I really buried all of that until my son, Ben, passed away. And his death is sometimes a doorway. And that was a big doorway back to spiritual life for me, because I immediately saw him. Yeah, he came to me as I was in the airport trying to get home from vacation after he passed. And I had been on vacation when I had heard that he had passed. And so desperately trying to get home, and he appears, his big 6'8" funny self, and then faded away. And I didn't know what to make of that. And so in my left brain mind, I called my ex-husband and said, I think he's alive. I think he's in the at the ME's office, and he's trying to get out. He's trying to get out. You've got to go check. You've got to go check. I think he's alive. And so the ME very kindly checked and said, no, I'm sorry. He's gone. And so that began this spiritual awakening of feeling, sensing, knowing that he was there around me, that led me to wanting to contact a medium and pursue other spiritual practices, mostly so that I could open up to talk with him. And then, gosh, it opened up to so many other things, including seeing other spirits on the other side and helping spirits to transition and finding a shamanic healing practice. So I left behind all that law, a lifetime appointment, and left it all behind and traveled the world and rediscovered myself.
Wow. That's amazing. So I noticed that most of your books are within the last 10, 15 years or so. They've been
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What was the first book that you turned to after
Oh
your
gosh, the very first book that I turned to was Broken Open by Elizabeth Lesser. And the title, I think the title caught me, and just broken open. And I felt so broken open and so heartbroken. And it was before I was still working, and I was hadn't really found the shamanic path. And I just one day someone had said to me, well, your son and you decided all this before you came in, that he would have this experience and that he would lead you to a spiritual path, and that you would then change your life and do all these things. And then I thought to myself, what about my daughter? If I had this crazy cosmic tea party with my son where we decided all these things, what arrangement did I make with my daughter? I was just desperate. And so out of the blue, I just emailed Elizabeth Lesser. Didn't know her. I just had to get it off my chest. So I wrote her this big long thing. What do you think? Is that the way it works? And have I, what if I did make some arrangement with my daughter? Can I get out of it? And I never expecting. And she so beautifully, kindly wrote me back a beautiful letter and saying, I don't think that's the way it is. I don't think there was some crazy cosmic tea party and you made all these things up. And even if there were, there's no saying that you would have the same experience with your daughter. So, so kind of her. And it was just one of those, it's like she saved my life. So, and she still supports me to this day. She endorsed my book and she's just a beautiful human being that just saw this mother in anguish and reached out and saved my life at that moment, because I wasn't sure life was worth living anymore. If I had to worry about my daughter and already having lost my son, I just didn't think I could take a whole lot more.
Loss is one of the hardest things for us humans to deal with, isn't it? I mean, we can cope with a lot of things, but to lose someone, so close, so young as well.
Yeah.
That's the unthinkable for all of us.
Yeah. They say that the most difficult deaths are the unexpected death and the death of a child. And when you have the unexpected death of a child, you're in a very bad place.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth Lesser's book, Broken Open, was published in 2004, and she's obviously on your list. She wrote another book, which is Cassandra Speaks, When Women Are the Storytellers, the Human Story Changes. I just love that whole concept. So tell us a little bit about that particular book, because that's a very recent one. It was published in 2020.
Yes, right. And so actually she had shared with me the manuscript before it was published, and
that was nice.
Just amazing. And I loved it so much. It touched me in a moment where I think for many women who are successful, kind of in power position, we have a very wounded relationship with our inner feminine. We've kind of conformed ourselves to male society, to that standard model of success, and put ourselves in that position and competed with men and were highly successful and won. To maybe the detriment, I didn't really value the feminine roles and models that I had seen. And so this book by Elizabeth is amazing, because the premise is, what if all the old stories, the ones of Eve and Cassandra and all the old stories about goddesses were written by women instead of men? How might they be portrayed? And I really never really got on the goddess wagon, because, people would say, oh, I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to embody the goddesses. But I thought, oh, they seem so petty and jealous and seductive. There doesn't seem to be a lot of substance there. Right. And so really having her really reach out and get us to consider the divine feminine, this feminine aspect that's equal to the goddess equal to the god, and how we might find that within us, how we might even change our stories and the way we speak. Instead of, if you look around, most of the statues in the world are war statues and heroes and all these sorts of things. And so what if the statues were about women? What if that statues were about women who created communities and societies? And what, instead of using war terms like, let's all march along here, we used a different term? How about we all get together and go along this way together peacefully or meaningfully or something like that? So she just challenges so many things that it's just phenomenal. And Brene Brown made a comment in her book, and she's been interviewed many times with Elizabeth, and Brene said, I found the patriarchy living within me. Oh, wow. That just was like a stab to the heart. I'm like, yes, I accepted all that. This is the way to success. This is how to be. This is the model. And if we're going to compete, I'm going to win, right? I'm going to compete like a man. I'm going to win. I'm going to go for all the brass rings and all in the most competitive way possible. And instead of ever considering there might be a different way. Maybe there wasn't a way when I was growing up. I think women like me that grew up in the 50s, we were in 40s, we were the ones who kind of led the pack. When we went to law schools and things, we were in the minority. I think there may be 5% or 10%. And certainly before that, there might have only been 1 or 2 in a class. And so we were sort of challenging and leading the way and trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And I think Gloria Steinem has talked about this in so many beautiful ways too. Yeah. So I have my little power tie, and I have my blue suit, and my black suit, and my gray suit, and they were all very structured and very manlike and manly, and right, and so I went in the Army, so another place. And they said, well, maybe you'll do legal assistance. And I'm like, oh, no, I want to do criminal law. Well, they didn't have very many women do. Most women didn't want to do criminal law. And I'm like, give me the tough stuff. I can do that. So I wanted to compete in a man's world and win.
Yeah. That's so interesting because, I'm reminded of my friend Kate Montana, who's an author. And she says that, women, they achieved liberation to be like a man.
Yes.
Yeah. And we didn't realize it. We thought the opportunities that we were getting, no, it was just the more you behave like a man, the further you'll go.
Right. So that's where we squashed our inner feminine. We didn't value the feminine. In fact, we slapped that down. We don't want to be emotional. We don't want to show any feelings. We want to be like men. That's a winning paradigm.
Yeah. You gave a nice little grid when you sent me your list on paper, and you did old story power and doing power differently and what the difference is. I don't know if you remember any of those, but if you do, give us some examples.
So the old story of power is this strong and weak hierarchy model. It's all that hierarchical thing. I'm in charge, and you're the next, and you're the vice president, and you're the chief judge, and you're the administrative judge, and you're just one of the. And the doing power differently is this partnership model where we kind of are all around the table together, that round table, that Arthurian kind of round table, the round table of knights. And instead of being authoritarian, being interactive. Instead of valuing individualism and fortitude and action, values relationships and empathy and communication. And so withholders, all the withholders of praise and encouragement, right? Those ones that have to be the unpleasable ones, because if you're unpleasable, then people will say, oh, I'll jump higher, do more, right? So it creates this paradigm of disempowerment.
Yeah.
And instead, try this where you're generous with praise and encouragement.
If women ran the world, eh?
Yeah. Right. Women, running the world with having been re-educated back to other ways of doing power. Because when you have internalized the patriarchy, and there's a great book that was written a while ago called The Shadow King, and it talks about just different ways that we've internalized the patriarchy about what women should say, what women should do, how they should be with men and children and all these things. It's sort of reading it, I thought, oh gosh, they're all there. I swallowed them all and said, okay, I see all that, and I see how women have to, what their roles are, and I don't want that one. I'm going to do something completely different.
Well, good for you. And book number 3 on your list, Outrageous Openness, Letting the Divine Take the Lead by Tosha Silver, published in 2011.
2011. Oh, gosh, I just love her so much. And she's written a few books after that, too. And she is so pithy and funny. So her chapters are about 3 pages long. And in 3 pages, she hits this amazing point and then moves on to the next chapter. So she's telling her story. And she was one of those authors that allowed me to say to myself, I could dare to be funny. I could dare to make my book tell some funny anecdotes, say it in a funny way. I don't have to be serious, because I had been told, part of the patriarchy, you laugh too much, you smile too much, right? And so I had internally, I have all this serious, and you are the judge. Whoa, serious. It sort of took me out of my box and said, "Ooh, I like this. I really like her. I like her ways." You can join her group and be with her, and she does meditations and things, and she's fantastic. But one of the things she talks about is how much anger we carry. And what if you got a basket of tomatoes and went out in the backyard or out by a fence somewhere and really let them fly? Right? And release that anger. What if we dared to do that? So most of us keep our anger so buttoned down, bottled down, close hold. We don't dare let it out. What if we let it out? Yeah, I'm furious about that. That makes me really angry. Splat. Or plates, she said, even old plates or whatever it is. And I just love that. That way of releasing, because I think women, well, and men, we've been taught to keep it in. Don't release it. Don't let anybody know. Don't let anybody see it. Don't let it out, right? And how about if you let it out? Because that stuck energy really, my clients, I do a lot of shamanic work. And one thing I can say is when people come in with cancer, autoimmune, all sorts of diseases, I can almost always find unresolved grief or loss that they've kept in and kept down. And that stuck energy manifests in the physical body.
Yeah. Zip it up. Zip it up.
Zip it up. Stiff upper lip, I think you say in the UK.
The Brits are very good at that. Very good indeed. Yeah. So book number 4 is The Art of the Pilgrimage, The Seeker's Guide to Making Travel Sacred, by Phil Calcino. 1998. He leads tours for the Joseph Campbell Foundation.
Yeah. Oh, I just love this one too. It just came up at the right time. I think everything is so synchronous when you have your spiritual journey. But he just really talks about travel as a spiritual practice instead of travel as entertainment. What if every place you went, you looked for the spiritual places around? You visited and you sat with it and you continued on your spiritual journey without entertainment, without maybe alcohol or, I don't know, sitting by the pool. What if it was a different kind of experience? And I just lapped that up. And so for my 2.5-year journey around the world, that's what I did. Every place I went, I was looking at temples and shamans and priests and Sufi masters and really trying to suck up. For me, I was trying to suck up at that moment, what is death? And what are we supposed to do with our grief and our loss? How are we supposed to go on? And I really thought it was all going to be a travel blog about different places I went and who I visited. And it turned into the book. And then I found the spiritual practice and the 4 winds and the 16 practices. And it just came together like, oh my gosh. So these people that are grieving, all of us who have grief and loss in our lives, which is most of us at some point, what if we're on a journey? And what if the journey, as above, so below, those same ones that our loved ones are taking, transition from the physical body to the spiritual, resurrection, waking up on the other side and saying, oh boy, it's different over here. Now what? And then eventually being reborn into a new life. And so this mirrors Christian and Egyptian and other mythologies about the path that the person spirit goes on after they pass. And so what if we're on the same path? What if all of us are on a journey? And so people that are saying it's time to move on in our soundbite, time to move on, time to get over it. Oh, I can't believe she's still talking about that. Maybe she needs to see a psychiatrist and get some medication because this is just taking way too long. Or on the other hand, there's no win here. If you do it too quickly and you get over it too quickly by somebody's standards, they'll say, wow, she sure didn't seem to care. She got over that very quickly. She must be really glad they're gone. So there's no win in this. But what if you were on your own journey?
Yeah.
This art of the pilgrim. What if you were on a pilgrimage? And everything that you did, you went through all those phases of becoming from being profoundly stuck to getting lighter, and then creating a new life out of the old one that honors your loved one. Wow.
How long did it take you to have that realization?
Well, it took me a couple of years actually, because I didn't come from a spiritual path or practice. And I was just kind of wandering the earth trying to find things out, but I was taking notes and writing them down. And then as I sat down, finally, it's a funny story because I was traveling and traveling and traveling, and really I thought I was going to keep on going, but the wheels started falling off in my suitcases. And I had really good suitcases, and the first suitcase, the wheels fell off. Okay, I replaced it. Fell off another suitcase, the wheels. I think I had 2 suitcases and a carry-on that I traveled the world with for 2.5 years. And then another time. And the third time I said to myself, I had at least done some shamanic work. And I said to myself, there's a message here. What am I being told? And what I was being told is time to go home. Return home with the gifts. That's the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. But the last step, returning home with the gifts. It was time to return home. And once I returned home and I sat down to write, I got a little jammed up because I thought, oh, how am I going to get a publisher? How am I going to get an editor? Everybody says it's so hard and it's impossible and so that kind of interferes with your mindset. But once I sat in meditation, I was sort of like, let that go. Right. Don't worry about those details. Get it down, put it in paper. And then one day it just came to me. The journey. This is what this is about. This is what people need to know, that they're on a journey, on a pilgrimage with their grief. There's no right time or wrong time. All our journeys are perfect in the right time for us.
Yeah.
And how can we move through some of this heavy energy and release it so that we can truly honor our loved one on the other side?
Yeah. And we need to. I mean, we've, developed a culture that is so afraid of death, it doesn't want to talk about it at all. Doesn't
No,
want to face it.
it's
And it's,
completely balance.
it's the other end of birth. That's it.
And it has tremendous transformative energy. And we know that marriage and parenthood, things like that, have transformative energy. Our lives will change. So we look at grief, though, and death, and we say, oh, our lives are going to change in a worse way. And it's all sort of negative and despair and hopelessness and sadness. But what if there was a little more to it? What if there's a little bit of that energy that you could tap into to change life in a powerful and meaningful and positive way? So that's what I found.
Yeah. Okay, so book number 5 is The Way of the Rose, The Radical Path of the Divine Feminine, Hidden in the Rosary, by Perdita Finn and Clark Strand. And this was published in 2019 by a Zen Buddhist monk and his feminist wife.
I love this too. This one came to me at a profound point in my life too, because I was really struggling with meditation, sitting on the cushion for hours in my busy bee mind. And I just felt like I was really struggling to get there. So then I found a chanting practice. And for me, chanting was a way of kind of calming the savage mind, if you will, and allowing me to then be able to meditate. And I'm never going to be, I've found, that person that's going to sit on the cushion for 4 hours or 8 hours a day. And then I thought, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I should try harder and work longer and force myself. And then I came across this book. And the premise here is that women access meditative states often in a different way. So the rosary, praying the rosary. So you see the women praying the rosary over and over, working with their hands, knitting, crocheting, making quilts. Muslims also have prayer beads. Buddhists have prayer beads. And women pray with their hands and their busyness. And she related it to the difference in between male and female roles, traditional ones, where men had to attain that stillness so that they could stalk the game. They had to sit for long periods quietly to bring home the game, where women were out hunting and gathering. So women have that sort of movement, meditative movement, instead of maybe meditative stillness on the cushion. So this book just hit me at the right spot too, where I thought, hey, I love beads and I love chanting, and I love chanting with the beads. So maybe that's my way. And I don't have to get to that 4 or 8 hours on the cushion that I find fill me with such dread.
Yeah. It sounds like a really interesting book. What does it say here? Neither of them had any interest in religion at all. They turned their backs on that. But their main spiritual concerns were the fate of the planet and the future of their children and grandchildren in an age of ecological collapse, something I'm sure we all share.
Yes.
But this lady who came to them spoke of the miraculous power of the rosary to transform lives and heal the planet. And she revealed the secrets she'd hidden within the rosary's prayers and mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And I like that idea, because I'm not, I sit there every day and spend an hour meditating, but I could, chant with the rosary. I could do something that's active rather than just passive.
Yeah, that's what I found too. And that book all these books came, it seemed like right at the right moment, where I just had an answer to a question, and plop, the book popped up, and there was my answer.
Yeah, that's what I love about books. They always do.
They do.
Always do. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a brief break now. When we come back, our first book on return is going to be The Cafe on the Edge of the World, a story about the meaning of life. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a few moments.
Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Omtimes Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit sedgbeer.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Karen Johnson. Okay, The Cafe on the Edge of the World, a story about the meaning of life by John Strelicky, an international and inspirational bestseller that's been described as the alchemist for the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful book. And actually, it's going to be made into a movie. And I can see why, because it really is a fantastic tale that so many people can relate to. What if you were just driving along and you were kind of running out of gas and you're way up in the mountains, and all of a sudden you came across this cafe. And the cafe, unbeknownst to you, is filled with all sorts of spiritual beings that get you on the path to looking at your life and answering the 3 big questions. Why are you here? Do you fear death? And are you fulfilled? Wow. And this main character then embarks on a journey of self-discovery. And it's a mystical journey of answering those 3 big questions. And it's just such a wonderful book. And there's another book, it's a series now. There's at least 1 more, maybe 2 more, that just great reads. You know, sometimes the simplest read of the story is amazingly deep. And so it's not deep in the sense of a complicated, theoretical, intense, deep book, religious tome of some sort, but it's a lightweight, beautiful story that just touches your soul.
The best stories are the simplest ones. That's why The Alchemist and, Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 Agreements, etc., were just, the power of now. I mean, they're so simple and they speak to every single person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so number 7, The Divine Matrix, Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief by Gregg Braden, published in 2006.
Yeah. So this one, I had begun my path toward shamanism and with shamanism. And of course, my skeptical mind, they're talking about, working remotely and working in the field and how shamans journey, and we journey to the past and we journey to the future. My mind is sort of skeptical still. And then Gregg Braden comes along just at the right moment in the Divine Matrix. And so he really talks about quantum physics in a way that scientists, if you're not a scientist, you can understand. Non-scientists can understand. And it really just was at that moment that I really got this glimpse into the world of quantum physics and said, oh my gosh, this is what the shamans of old were talking about in different words and terms. They didn't have the word quantum physics, but they were talking about remote access, remote viewing, going to the past, going to the future, and still being grounded in this world in the present, but being able to be in different places at different times, and how time is a pretzel and it's not linear. And so very understandable. If anybody ever wants to get a glimpse into quantum physics without having to read a theoretical paper, I sure didn't want to read one of those because I knew I wasn't going to get it. This is a great book.
Mm. And your next book is also by Gregg Braden, The Lost Mode of Prayer, published in 1999.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this one, Gregg Braden is so readable. I love his sentence structure and the way he puts a paragraph together. So it's just understandable. And what I loved about this, it was talking about the Essenes or Essenes, however you want to pronounce that. Everybody has a little different pronouncement. And it was sort of the group that was maybe Jesus's time, right around that time, or maybe even Jesus was in the scene, but they really approach prayer in a very different way. So our petitionary sort of prayer that maybe we learned in church was, please give me, I need, I don't have, I want, right? So all these things that we are asking for, asking. But the lost mode of prayer talks about praying as if it were already done. Thank you. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for filling me with peace. Thank you for taking care of my loved one. Thank you for this beautiful opportunity. So it's just put it all kind of on its head. And I thought, oh my gosh, yeah. Instead of I lack, I don't have. And we get into this kind of prayer where we're almost defeated, right? It's almost depressing. It's very sad, and it's all filled with despair and hopelessness and sadness. What if we were thankful and grateful for, thank you for doing that. Thank you for making this happen for me. And it really changed the way I pray, the way I pray.
And what did you notice?
I noticed that things happened in a very organic way without my having to beg. That was already in the works. And so my saying thank you, it came, and I could just celebrate. Thank you. It's that opportunity for gratitude and thankfulness. And sometimes we forget about gratitude. And this is gratitude for the future, which is in quantum physics makes perfect sense. We're thanking the universe in advance, or God, whatever your concept is, for something that's coming. And so when we receive it, it's like, thank you. And then the next thing that comes up, say, wow, this thing that is coming up for me, thank you for making this happen. Thank you for making this introduction to Sandy happen. Thank you for making this Hay House book happen. Thank you. And it comes in a very light, beautiful way.
Yeah, it has a whole other energy around it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So book number 9 is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One by Joe Dispenza. And that was published in 2012.
Yeah, I love Dr. Joe, although sometimes I would get very frustrated with him when I didn't quite understand what he was talking about. But what I love about this book is he talks about, because he's a doctor, he can talk about the physiological effects of drama on us and how we can become addicted to drama and addicted to creating drama in our lives because of all the chemicals that are released, cortisol, adrenaline. We can become addicted to those chemicals that are produced in our very own body. And I loved looking at that, because do you ever wonder, sometimes you think, this person creates drama wherever they go. If there's no drama, they're going to make drama. And then when you look at it in that light of, oh my gosh, this person is addicted to drama. Oh, I wonder if I'm addicted to drama. Oh, how might I be creating drama in my life to feed these chemicals, these powerful chemical hormones? And how might I stop that? Because what is great about Dr. Dispenza is he not only explains what's going on, he helps you to find a way through meditative practices and breathing as a deep breathing exercise to help release.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. He's certainly very, very popular.
He He is very
Mm.
popular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he does good work.
it
So
does.
that's your 10 best list. Let's talk about you a
Yeah.
little bit more. I noticed that you were trained by Alberto Villoldo, but
Yes.
you did not have a single one of Alberto's books on your list. Why is that?
I know. I think I'm so deeply entrenched into all his works. His works are, I mean, he's been sort of, and I talk about him in my book, that he's been sort of the foundation. He's a mentor and a founder. And I think all those books I've just absorbed. And these ones are sort of outside the shamanic world a little bit, outside of what I'm so familiar with. So I think I thought about that too. And I thought, well, I think I'm so familiar. Which book would I choose?
Yeah.
He's got something like 21 books, and each one of them, so Illumination, Soul Retrievals, so many books that I just have embodied the wisdom of all that in the shamanic way. And then, so sometimes I take a little trip outside the shamanic literature that I'm so familiar with, and those are the books that came up.
In your training, you must have experienced a number of shamanic journeys for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most eye-opening, powerful, impactful journey? Can you share that with us?
Oh yeah. So we as shamans go to the past, and that's where we look in the lower world and look for soul parts. Soul parts. So when trauma happens to us, it's not the healed part that flees. It's the healed part that flees. The trauma that stays with us. And so the lore is that Waskar, Lord of Death, Lord of Life, in the lower world is keeping our soul parts safe, the ones that are healed, that fled because they couldn't stand the trauma. And so those are things that happened in the past, and really going to the past for myself and for others. Mostly as shamans, the most powerful journeys to the past are done by someone on your behalf, because we can't always see our own shadows, our own things that we don't want to see, we don't see. And so someone else can bring them back for us, bring back that lost part. And so one of the most powerful ones I ever had was with Alberto. And he brought back an aspect of me that was like a mermaid, free, beautiful, moving, going through the waters, right? And this aspect of me that had been sort of suppressed, that was very regimented. So this is this wild aspect of the feminine. And the feminine was a part of me that I had kind of squashed. And so bringing that wild feminine was amazing.
Did you really resonate with that?
I did.
After all your years in a man's world?
Yeah, for sure. Feeling
Yeah.
and then feeling profoundly stuck in that, and to have this archetypal energy, this mermaid type of freedom, this feminine energy come back was very powerful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let's talk about grief, because I mean, you write about grief in a very different way, and dying and grief seems to be a popular subject right now. I'm glad that the world is opening up and people are becoming more receptive to the topic, but I've not read about grieving in the way that you write about grieving. And you see grieving as you say it carries, an energy that we can tap into to create a new life.
Yeah.
It can be so positive for us. So tell me a little bit about that.
So what I like to set up for people is a way to access their neocortex, to get out of the everyday fight, flight, reptilian brain. And so I have exercises in the book that have people sit in space, get in touch with themselves, light a candle, and have a book and a piece of paper to write down things like, who am I judging? Who's judging me? What are the stories that are going through my head that are making me suffer? I should have done this. I should have made them go to the doctor. I should have stayed home. I shouldn't have gone vacation, blah, blah, blah. And in a very ceremonial way, write it all down, and take it to the fire, burn it. So the nice thing is you can be radically honest because nobody's going to see this. You can say, my mother disappointed me, my sister disappointed that people would take umbrage with and be all upset if you told them to your face, but you're giving it all to spirit. So we're giving it away for spirit to take this away and transform it for me and open my heart to a different way of being. And so my book is really based on the ceremony of grieving and allowing yourself to release and release and release and bring in new ways so that by the time you're at the end of the book, you're actually able to look at the concept of creating a new life out of the ashes of the old. So a lot of books about grief and loss also talk about things you can do in the physical realm. If you've lost your husband or your wife, go on a date, go to a movie, go to this, go to that. And what I was finding is that people kept saying, I'm not ready. I can't. I don't want to do that. I don't want to. And so my book is sort of a precursor to all the things you can do on the physical realm, because maybe the reason you're not ready and the reason you can't make yourself do those things is because you're carrying a lot of heavy, heavy energy, a lot of shame, blame, guilt, right? That great triangle. So how can we get to that and find out where you're stuck and allow yourself to release it? And people resonate with this because when you walk into a temple or a church and they've got candles for you to light, even if you're not a member of that denomination, we kind of go to there and we light the candle and we pray for our loved ones. And we know kind of our prayers are being carried to the heavens, to wherever you think they go, on the smoke. And so working in ceremony, working in this way, we can move things with the lightness of a feather blowing in the breeze. Instead of at the physical level, we're trying so hard. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go to a party. I'm going to go have lunch, and then finding ourselves unable. So I went to many luncheons and movies and things. And finally, I told people, think of me as a zombie. I only have half a heart. Zombies don't go to lunch, and they don't go to dinner, and they don't go to movies. I can't. I just can't. So, but then the bigger question was, why can't I? What am I carrying around? And that was the beauty of the shamanic world and finding out, oh gosh, how can I work with that? How can I find out where I'm profoundly stuck and allow a little bit of lightness to come in, a little bit of light, so that we're not digging the same neural networks over and over again of despair and hopelessness. We're now creating, I always say, practice beauty. Have people write practice beauty and stick it on their refrigerator. And what is one thing every day that you can do that you can enjoy? A flower, a piece of candy, a sunset, a sunrise. It doesn't have to be a big art show or a big whatever, but just one little thing where we're allowing a little bit of beauty back in, getting in touch with maybe what brought us joy and happiness in the past that we've let go of in our grief and our heaviness. So practicing beauty helps us to dig new neural networks and helps us to be able to actually experience joy again.
There are a lot of myths and misconceptions around grief. People think, if I don't buy the most expensive casket, spend the largest sum of money on the funeral, have the biggest wake, or grieve the longest, then I couldn't really have loved that person.
And maybe that loved one on this other side is saying, oh, they don't love me, or they're not showing, we're not, right? So, so
how do you handle that with people?
Well, what I like to introduce people to is it's always changing people's perception, just a little. What if they were right there on the other side? And what if all that you're doing, being stuck and creating a shrine out of their room and not moving on and staying home, what if you're holding their kite string a little? What if they can't be free to do all that's available to them on the other side because you're holding on so tight? And what if they already know that you love them? They already know. They are already right there. They're watching everything. They know you love them. They know the depth of your love. And what if they wish for you to move too? And as you move, as above, so below, as you move and you open a little and you shift and you change and you create a new life that honors them, what if they're able to move on too? Right? So just a little what if? What if? So I think we get so stuck in these old paradigms of culture and society and family of this is the way it's got to be. But what if, what if it's a little different? So I had a father that had lost his daughter about 6 years before they came across my website, and he read that, and it's 8 things spirits on the other side wish you knew. And so one of them is exactly that. And he said, oh God, it was so profoundly healing. Whoa, she already knew. And this way my moving through my grief is helping her move along and enjoy the other side in a bigger and better and more full way.
Yeah. You say that there is a lot of wondrous wisdom in grieving.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, I think you really find out about what really is important, what really matters in life, and which people really matter. And does it really matter if you have all the best stuff? If your child dies, does it really matter if you've got the best car and the best house and the best job and the best and stuff? Our stuff. George Carlin has a great thing about that, but we think we own our stuff, but our stuff really owns us, because then you buy it and then you got to store it and then you got to buy a bigger house to store more stuff. And I think it puts things into perspective in a way. Death is a doorway, and it's the great awakening to life and awakening to things. And I found out I could leave everything go, all my fancy artwork and my fancy house and all my cars, and end up with 2 suitcases and a carry-on and travel for 2.5 years and not miss any of it and be free from it. And sometimes I think we need that, a little bit of perspective and wisdom, because we get so caught up in the consensual reality, consensual society. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How long ago did your son pass?
8 years, November 2nd. So
Are you still communicating with him?
Yes. He and I worked together to help souls transition. And so one of my actually, this is sort of going into my next book, but one of his recent communications, it was his birthday, and it's so sad, Ben, come visit me. This is, I'm missing you, and blah, blah. And so he came and said, Mom, you're kind of being a bummer about this. You know where I am, and you know I'm happy on the other side, and you know that I come when you need me, but you don't need me right now. You got this. So let's lighten this up. This is not the way to do it. All this misery and despair. And I could go from his birthday, September 21st, all through, Easter, Passover, whatever. That's like a big glob of holidays, right?
Yeah.
A big glob.
Yeah.
And we can get lost in the despair and hopelessness of that time. And it goes on all the time. I mean, forever. There's always going to be those marks. They don't go away. And so how can we deal with that relentless passing of celebrations and memorials and holidays that we have got to face until we go? And so that's sort of it. How can we shift the perspective a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, if you had to, or having come more recently to the table of spirituality, if you were asked to choose one of your 10 books to give to someone who also was new to the spiritual path, which of these do you think would be the most helpful?
Wow, that's such a good question, because these are the ones I pass along to people all the time. and depending on where they're at. So if I had to choose one for, oh gosh, that's a tough one. I love them all so much, but maybe the one about the cafe on the edge of the world. I think it's such a great introduction to the 3 great questions.
Yeah.
And that there may be a spiritual journey, and maybe you could find it for yourself. That's a good
Okay.
intro. And then on someone else who's really stuck on holding a lot of emotion and not letting go, Tosha Silver, throw those tomatoes.
Yeah.
So there's something for everybody in all these books.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's why we're building the archive. There's something for everybody on a spiritual path in, the recommendations of our guests like you. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for adding your 10 best list to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Okay, so you can find out more about Karen Johnson's book, Living Grieving, Using Energy Medicine to Alchemize Grief and Loss, along with information about her events, retreats, workshops, and consulting services at karenjohnson.net. Before we go, just a quick reminder that if you enjoyed this show and would like to see others, you can find them all on YouTube, and you can also see every single episode at the No BS Spiritual Book Club. And if you would like to sign up for a free newsletter, you can be informed every month of the latest updates, the new lists that are going into the library, and also receive last-minute reminders about these episodes. So you can find that at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com, which is part of sedgebeer.com. So you can get there either way. And finally, if you have a book in you but don't know how to get it out of your head and into the hands of those who are waiting to read it, check out sedgebeer.com, click on the Work With Me tab, and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories could be what you're looking for. That's it for this week. I'm Sandy Sedgebeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.